Great. Thanks for kicking that off, Renee.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome. Appreciate your time today. We're gonna talk about next level data centers. We're gonna talk with Dell and with F5, and Chris Haight and I are gonna discuss a little bit about some of the some of the things that we're seeing in around the data center and public cloud, and kind of some of the data that we're getting from some of the surveys we're doing. But thanks for joining us today. And We'll go ahead and move into the content. So my name's KJ Burke.
Oh, it's displaying the wrong content.
Oh, it is. Which one is it
Yeah.
displaying? It's not displaying the agenda.
It's displaying the preview pane that you would see.
Oh, that's really weird. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me 1 second. Let me stop my share. I'll reshare. Okay.
The webinar is complete without technical glitches.
Yeah. Well, at least we can have it right up front, hopefully. So let me
Yeah.
see. That was really odd, though. Okay, I'm just going to I'll share that screen. Share content. There we go. Hopefully that will. Uh,
There we
is
go.
that correct? Okay.
That looks right.
See if I can grab this and move it out. Okay. Okay. So apologize for that. We'll trim that off the video. So thanks for joining us. Quick agenda. Going to introduce ourselves. We're going to talk about some of the information that we're gathering at CDW from some of the surveys and some of the data that we're seeing from you, our customers, and from the marketplace in Canada specifically. Going to talk about some of those data center trends. We're going to talk about really investing time in security and resilience and operational excellence. And then we're going to hand it off to our partners, Dell and F5, and they've got technologies that really drive towards that resiliency, drive towards that ease of operations. So I'm KJ Burke. I'm the principal technology strategist around hybrid cloud. I report into our Office of Tech Strategy, into Theo Van Wyck. And my role is really to help better understand the needs of our customers, better understand what our capabilities are, and then help the teams here prepare and change the way that we service our customers to then better meet their needs. And I'm joined by Chris Haight. Chris, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Chris Haight here. I'm your Senior Solutions Architect at CDW Canada. I'm out in the West, Vancouver, BC. My focus is hybrid infrastructure solutions, which includes server platforms, virtualization, a lot of complementary technology to go along with it, networking, storage, backup, whether it's on premises or in public cloud. And I help my customers with technology roadmaps and overview and kind of guide them on their journey from on-prem to cloud and that whole hybrid solutions and scenarios. Today, with this presentation, I'll focus on the important key findings from our customers' feedback to our survey around the data center, keeping the talk to, in my case, HCI, which is hyperconverged infrastructure, with Dell Technologies VxRail, and speak to how the solution will ease our customers' pains in their environments and what it has to offer. With that, back to you, KJ, for an overview of CDW.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And so one thing you as customers I want you to understand is not only do we have Chris, but we have a wealth of solutions architecture, pre-sales resources to kind of help you ideate about your problems. And so I'll touch that very briefly in a second. If you've been through any CDW presentations, you've probably seen this slide, but I'm gonna talk about it in a slightly different manner. And really, what I want to just stress here is CDW is really investing in services and really focused on being that solutions integrator for you as the customer. And so what I like to talk about with this slide is really starting in 2015 with Kelway is CDW's commitment to acquiring and building up talent around services. And so this is particularly important as we build towards, hybrid cloud and supporting our customers in the public cloud. But when you look at the Kelway acquisition in the UK, the Scalar acquisition here in Canada, you look at IGNW and Aptris and Sirius and Amplified IT, our focus is really to work with you, the customer, and help you, really find the services and build out the solutions that you need to be successful. So that's the only reason I want to talk to this, is not necessarily to talk about the story of CDW, but really where our focus is and what we're focused on bringing you, as a customer. And then just really quickly, I want to talk about our approach. So we at CDW really view, our role as an advisor, as a solutions provider, as a product delivery company to our customers, as a continuum. We want to better understand your goals. That's where, I work with some great professionals like Chris who'll help customers, look at their goals, discover ways forward that will help, meet those business goals and objectives, architect solutions, design the technical components, deliver that, and then focus on the relationship. But we really view this as a continuum. We want to make sure that you have a good experience with technologies like F5, like Dell, and then you are successful, and then we continue to build on that next opportunity and solve that next problem. So the other thing to note around CDW is, we have a global reach, but we have local attention. So again, we have people in all of the Canadian cities that have an NHL team, and then there's a couple others that are in a little more remote places, like out in Halifax. But we have people that we can get, working with you to whiteboard your solutions, build confidence in the technologies that you need to support your business goals and objectives, and then make that happen. I'm not going to touch too much on this, but we are focused in the digital workspace. We help our customers in the data center, the cloud. We have a very mature cybersecurity practice. Security is part of everything we do. You work with Dell, you work with F5, and you realize that their ability to support your security needs and your compliancy requirements is one of the reasons why we recommend them as partners. And then you have, traditionally F5 has been all about the network, but now with their WAF services with NGINX, it becomes more of a conversation about security in everything you're doing. So we have a very secure, very mature cybersecurity practice. Obviously, software and helping you move that forward. The focus is really around the applications, and then networking, whether that's, SD-WAN and that. So I want to get into the survey data and trends. This is a slide that I have graciously stole from south of the border, from the US. And we see a lot of trends developing in the US before they start to develop in Canada. So with this, cybersecurity is, again, a huge push. Everything we do has some measure of security, either an implication or there's risks we need to consider as we're working through that. Automation and orchestration, again, we're seeing a huge uptick in automation and orchestration, being able to, and F5 was the first group I heard talk about this, 3 or 4 years ago, and it was shifting to the left and moving your provisioning, moving your security, processes into your development teams, earlier into your testing processes. And so I know I'm stealing some of Joel's thunder, but automation orchestration is really critical to just, again, doing more with less. Digital transformation has been a buzzword forever. But what we see is organizations transforming to be digital and delivering value through applications, delivering value quickly, being able to test options and test ideas, and the term fail fast or as some people are saying, succeed quickly, like get to that decision-making point quickly. And it's really, incumbent upon the technologies and the solutions that we as IT professionals are deploying that help make that happen. Cloud and the integration of your on-premises data center with the public cloud, whether you're doing hybrid infrastructure, whether you're building cloud native services and leveraging containers, not just in the cloud, but also in the data center. It's really about, creating those consistent ways of working with those applications across those environments. So just a couple of trends we're seeing there. And then one of the things we're really trying to do, in this case, it's a survey that we are operating with Angus Reid. We're trying to bring more Canada specific data to the forefront because, it's more relevant, I think, to you as the customer. It's highly relevant to us to better understand what is the Canadian landscape doing, what are businesses really focused in on, and how can we be a conduit to kind of get that information. So this survey data is not just pulled from CDW customers. This survey data is really pulled from Canadian IT leaders, Canadian IT operations teams, developers, and so it represents a bit of a cross section across all of Canada where organizations are focused. And then just as a heads up, there's a report that kind of goes along with this. It goes into some of these a bit more. It really fleshes out, some of the details. And again, it's not a product focused set of content. It really is focused on just the ideas. And so we'll forward you guys a link to that content after this. There's a PDF report that kind of drills into this. What we're seeing across Canada is whether you're in the data center or whether you're in the public cloud, over the last couple of years, there have been significant events that have impacted IT's ability to really service the business. And so those things have manifested themselves in, traditionally, most likely a loss of productivity. They've added cost. They've, organizations have then had to retrofit for those types of issues. Maybe they've had to throw out some of the things they've done and redesign and re-architect. That's one of the areas we like to work with customers early in the process to better understand exactly what the requirements are, because it's really hard when you haven't built, risk into it. You haven't sort of evaluated, okay, well, how do we build reliability into it early in the process? And you really try and go back and do that later. They've led to security breaches, unfortunately, where there are outages, where we do make changes, where we act quickly, particularly with access control, then we can all of a sudden have security implications there and put ourselves at risk. And then loss of data and reputation. So 21% of organizations, those types of outages directly led to loss of data or loss of reputation. As we all know, our reputation is critical. So just to highlight those again, the report will spell it out a little bit more. Businesses have been hesitant to invest in the data center. We just put out the cloud report not too long ago, and one of the key findings of the cloud report was there is a 10% dip in organizations committed to building out in the data center versus building out into the public cloud. And so we're seeing, again, there's less investment in the traditional co-location, in the traditional data room. And in part, what that means is we need to be more optimized. And so, Chris is going to touch on that a bit. But again, we're seeing that drop in investment. And one of the key drivers there is, I would say that we, IT, maybe it's the cloud providers, have done such a great job of explaining the cloud as the solution for everything, that a lot of business leaders, don't fully understand the role of the data center. And so again, so it's that lack of understanding, that concern about CapEx and long-term investment in capital hardware that really, is challenging for organizations to continue to justify. One of the things that we're seeing is things like Dell Apex and looking at consumption-based models for hardware. And anyway, and then we're seeing the rise of SaaS services, and I know F5 plays in that space pretty heavily. So organizations need to look at managing across their hybrid infrastructure. As cloud services and SaaS services have been leveraged, there's been a value there where, again, you see that momentum, and that's because there is significant value, and organizations are really focused on, well, let's leverage SaaS services where we can, and then let's focus and really heavily start to develop and build our differentiating applications, a lot of times from scratch. So key survey recommendations: reevaluate how you're choosing to invest in your data center. Make sure that you have the right level of investment in your data center. Make sure you're focusing on some of those optimized technologies. Look at site reliability engineering at each location. Look at the way that you are bringing data across your WAN, how you're leveraging the public cloud in your data center, and making sure that you're building resiliency across those types of infrastructure. And then committing to investing in emerging and transformative technologies. Even during the pandemic, where digital workplace and working anywhere became a priority, organizations were still investing in machine learning at the same rate. They're still investing in looking at augmented reality, virtual reality in the same rate. So there are, even though you would think that investment in those types of solutions would go down, they've actually maintained fairly steady state from investment. So, hybrid infrastructure availability, focusing on site reliability, building that, we always talk about security in layers. Well, reliability in layers, making sure your data is available, your application is available, making sure your network transport is available, and that you're building, abstraction into those layers where possible to then, obfuscate where the data is from the application and obfuscate where the application is from your users, because if they don't rely on the application being in a certain place, then you can make it portable. If they don't rely on the data being in a certain place, then again you can make the data portable for the application. So so looking at that in layers, and don't just view it as an outage situation. View about, like, think about data slowdown, think about accessibility to the application slowing down as you start to break applications into multiple microservices and you start to build, a microservices architecture for some of your production applications. Think about what the impact on the network is, because now you've got different components of the network that are really, or different components of the application that are now linked via the network. Whereas, maybe traditionally it was all on one server together and on an OS. So looking at data portability, creating momentum of that data around your environment so that the data is where you need it to be. And then also dig into the shared responsibility model for cloud services. So, it's critical you understand what's your role. It's critical that you understand, what is really the role of the MSP, what is the role of the SaaS provider. And then fundamentally knowing the things like data are always our responsibility. So knowing that, you have to protect that data and build that data resiliency. But I'm going to stop there. I'm going to hand it off to Chris, and I'm going to give you control. Let me see. Chris Haight. He gave me the whole list of people to choose from. So
Wow.
make sure that
Everybody in the conference. I'll just quickly do a test. Let's see. Yeah, okay, that's going to move it. That's cool. We got functionality there. So thanks, KJ, for that strategy and vision and wonderful talk. I'm going to just think about technology trends. I want to go back to that and just think about the automation piece there, because that really helps organizations optimize on-premises and cloud infrastructure, leveraging tools like Ansible, Terraform, vRealize automation, orchestration, and others. You can really deploy and configure infrastructure, even keep configuration consistent and repeatable. And it's becoming a major talk with my customers these days, and really becoming a direction for them too. Some companies and organizations that have are actually going to standardize as infrastructure as code on one of those tools to keep everything very, very much the same as they go and free up time. Like, automation does free up staff to do more meaningful work while ensuring new hosts are configured to company standards, and again, ensuring consistent deployments on premises and or in public cloud. So with that, in the chat channel, we'll get a little interaction here. If you'd indulge me and just answer briefly the following question: who here is using automation today, and what tool or tools are you using? And if you're not using any today, just type none, and I'll come back. I'm just curious, and I'll come back and take a look at those answers a little bit later or at the end of the presentation. But I just want to, for my curiosity's sake, see who's actually using these tools and which ones they're doing. Thank you. Now, getting back on track, let's see where we are. Hybrid approach. So just thinking back to that survey data shared by KJ, we have, data center outages experienced by 30% of our respondents. Public cloud had service outages of 28% of our respondents. This is where a hybrid approach can really lessen the loss of productivity and keep things moving along, as you will have resources available on premises and cloud. You can quickly shift your application workloads, just thinking of automation again, as needed when there are problems with one or the other. The hybrid approach, I bet, speaks to a lot of the DR plan too, maybe even be it. Thinking of the Hci VxRail solution with continuous availability, stretch clustering, couple that with recover point for VMs and backup with Power Protect Data Manager, and you have a full BCDR solution here as it relates to Dell's VxRail solution and addressing and mitigating outages. And not to even talk about the high degree of integration, which I'm sure Dell will get to when they get to their side. It does mean, though, investment in the data center. From the survey results, 60% of Canadian organizations face a barrier when investing in data center infrastructure. A lack of understanding, with 27% concerned around cost and awareness. Being informed of new emerging technologies and investing in the right ones that fit your business are key and need to be understood to take things to the next level. Just switching over to the biggest concerns reported by our customers around the data center. I pull these specific topics out to focus on, as I have had many conversations with my customers that relates to the data center. Respondents reported some of the biggest concerns were maintenance, and that's still a problem today. Just 50% of respondents are having problems with maintenance. I'll go through the VxRail software stack, the lifecycle management, as it relates to maintenance in the next couple of slides, but our customers' concerns are just and disruptive or they're just with disruptive updates, unwanted software changes make it into the infrastructure, software and firmware falling behind, which then introduces a potential security risk and unplanned outages. Security and protection, 43% of our respondents. VxRail, it's designed, engineered, built, and manages a single product to minimize attacks by reducing the number of components in your infrastructure. VxRail software lifecycle management and VxRail composite bundles may include updates to BIOS, firmware, hypervisor, vSphere, or any of the included management components that make updating the complete software stack simpler and secure. Fully protecting your environment requires defense in depth with multi-layers of security. Dell Technologies and VMware offer security layers from edge to core to cloud that prioritize and continually address security. And of course, the cost always comes into play. There's a higher upfront cost for cloud purchasing and housing data center equipment with concerns around space, cooling, electricity, maintenance, and lifecycle management. And then, of course, decommissioning your old gear. What do you do with it? I really think the VxRail solution is very tight, integrated, I'd say nodes or building blocks that you can scale up or down easily. And they address, space, usually take less cooling, less electricity. And with the one button updates that I'm sure Dell will talk about as well, very easy to maintain and move forward. Lack of understanding, and I attribute this to more skill sets and training. There really should be an education plan in place to enable staff to make better decisions around the data center. Here we go, lifecycle management with VxRail. Getting back to the maintenance with lifecycle management, Dell EMC minimizes risk and operational costs with VxRail HCI system software, intelligent lifecycle management that helps keep the infrastructure in a continuously validated state. VxRail HCI system software delivers simplicity, scalability, and business agility through automation, orchestration, and end-to-end lifecycle management. VxRail HCI system software, it's a suite of integrated software elements that sits between infrastructure components and delivers a seamless, automated operational experience. Intelligent Lifecycle Management, LCM, automates non-disruptive upgrades, patches, node additions, or retirement while keeping the VxRail infrastructure in a continuously validated state to ensure workloads are continuously up and running. Dell's extensive investment in automated, repeatable testing on every firmware and software upgrade and patch ensures customers can upgrade with certainty and significantly improve IT productivity. And just a few slides I took from Dell themselves. It improves IT infrastructure team efficiency up to 60%. It'll eliminate time-consuming research and in-house interoperability testing. It'll support single cluster upgrades using a mix of hardware generations. Mix your nodes, again, goes to the scale. Streamlines change management processes with fully validated stack. And it'll keep your environment in continuously valid state with minimal effort. It'll reduce your downtime up to 88% with fewer unplanned outages. Eliminate time-consuming, eliminate time-consuming research and in-house interoperability testing. Support single cluster upgrades. I already went through there. Sorry about that. Gain confidence with upgrades, knowing VxRail handles the testing, optimizing, sequencing, and servicing. Minimize business disruption during the upgrade process and automatically reset nodes to previous versions. Getting back on track, lower costs by 47% compared to a similar public cloud solution. And I'm not sure if that's taken over time, a 3-year kind of life cycle, but maintain knowledge of and visibility into ensure the entire stack, eliminate incremental updates, extend solutions to the cloud with extensible REST APIs, which I'm sure we'll get into, receive AI and ML-driven guidance for infrastructure management. You'll also incur 52% lower cost of operations. You'll be having a more reliable, automated, and agile infrastructure foundation that eases time requirements for IT administrators and infrastructure teams. It's more streamlined and efficient IT infrastructure means lower hardware costs and expenses associated with running workloads. Reduced complexity, automated monitoring and processing, and improved performance drives efficiencies here. From an IDC study, one participant noted, patch management is much easier with VxRail. In the past, even with virtualization, the hardware was pretty problematic for patching. We had to move everything off manually and reboot the systems. I'm really hoping here that manual intervention and maintenance activities is coming to an end with automation tools and with VxRail. The VxRail HCI system software, it's kind of a big slide, a lot of Well, as you can see from the slide, the Dell VxRail HCI system software has a lot to offer in the way of integration and value. This unique combination automates deployment, provides full stack lifecycle management, and facilitates critical upstream and downstream integration points that create a truly better together experience with VxRail as the foundation. VxRail turnkey experience starts with full stack integration of software and hardware control and visibility from top to bottom for a consistent, deeply integrated VMware environment. Now, for more information, I encourage you to hit a link that I'm going to supply in chat. And in that link, there is a lot of information on, I think I can paste it in. C2, there we go. I think I sent it out. Anyways, that link there for VxRail, it goes into a lot of these in detail, but it goes into stuff that I can't touch on, which is like the vSphere for Tanzu and container integration with VxRail. They have a whole chat talk on that. There's a couple of videos in there. And the one thing I really want to stress on that link, there is a demo link where you can demo the actual VxRail software and solution and just kind of drive it yourself and just see how easy it is to manage and update and really get your kick the tires kind of deal on that software. Anyways, from our friends with Dell, or with our friends with Dell, I bet they'll have more to say on these topics and in the next part of our presentation. So I just want to say thank you, and I'll pass it over to John.
Thanks very much, Chris. I'm going to share my screen now. And let me know if you can see that all right. And I'm in presentation mode at the moment.
I'm seeing the
edit mode.
not the presentation mode, I'm seeing the other. There you go.
Ah, perfect.
Good stuff. Well, thanks very much, everyone. My name's John Schouten. I'm with Dell Technologies. I've been with Dell and formerly EMC for just over 2 decades. And one of the benefits of being with a firm like that for that length of time and tenure is you see quite a few inflection points. So we started back in early 2000 with storage consolidation, and then that was subsequently followed up with server consolidation and then virtualization. There was also a scale out versus scale up at one point. There was also a bricks versus blades versus rack. And most recently, we're into a new inflection point in the industry, which is really around software-defined storage. And basically what happened was this is a new sheriff in town because about 5 years ago, SSD drives became ubiquitous. And with the reduced cost of SSD drives, the SSD drives were able to be encapsulated within a node, a server, and be able to run a caching algorithm to cache the data. And as a result, we have HCI solutions based on software-defined storage that allow you to aggregate independent nodes into a compute complex and have virtual storage, as well as naturally running VMware. And so out of that, with VMware, we have software-defined storage utilizing Vsan. And Vsan is rather unique because it's embedded in the hypervisor natively, so it's very close to the kernel. There's virtually no context switching that happens from a kernel point of view. So as a result, it's very efficient, has very little overhead, and overall VMware ESX has very little overhead for server virtualization. In addition to that, what EMC did about 5 years ago as a Skunkworks project was put together a packaged offering with VMware around an engineered appliance based on Vsan. At that time, it was Vsan 5.5. And the thinking at that time was to create an automated stack. And it was consisted of server and Vsan and VMware ESX and VxRail Manager. And so, you know, subsequently 5 or 6 years later, we have a very simplified infrastructure that we call the VxRail appliance. It's practically our lead horse in our integrated server and solutions group portfolio because of its simplicity. It's simple from a management perspective, it's simple from a procurement perspective, and it offers an outstanding amount of value from a data center capability and customer point of view. And so one of the simplified elements from a management point of view is that vCenter is your single point of control for the VxRail appliance. So from vCenter, you can provision new nodes. From vCenter, you have full visibility into the hardware. And so it's rather than having a numerous numbers of tools, it's a simplified tool set, and it's a simplified deployment management model. Now, from a storage perspective, we're talking about software-defined storage and Vsan. And Vsan is very unique because this software-defined storage model is really around storage policy-based management. So in the traditional world, you would be utilizing RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 6, partitioning out LUNs. And in this case, we're providing RAID at the VM level. So the RAID, instead of at RAID at a LUN level, you've got RAID at the VM level. So that allows you now the ability to stack rank your virtual machines and decide which ones you want to have replicated, which ones you want to have RAID 1, which ones you want to have RAID 5. So a lot more flexibility. As was mentioned earlier, in terms of the lifecycle management, it's a full end-to-end stack that we lifecycle manage for you. So the PowerEdge server hardware, in terms of the BIOS, the firmware, the SAS HBA firmware, the VMware ESX hypervisor, virtual center, all of that is lifecycle managed as a complete system, an engineered appliance. So it significantly reduces the overall management burden of lifecycle management for hardware and for software. We also have automation as part of the package that I mentioned earlier. The automation here is in a couple of different dimensions. One is the deployment, the initial deployment, initialization of the cluster. That's all automated, as well as cloud expansion. So as you want to expand your cluster, you simply add nodes, and the VxRail Manager software and vCenter will recognize a new node coming onto the network because it advertises itself on a private VLAN. It will recognize that node coming onto the network, and it will graciously apply an image and accept it into the cluster, and then load balance the virtual machines across the cluster. So it's very simple to expand an existing and very simple to deploy a VxRail cluster environment. So in other words, you've got the big easy button. The big easy button in terms of management, deployment, and expansion and lifecycle management of a VxRail system. So that just gives you some of the background, and I added a few extra notes just because of the amount of time that I've spent with the product. But ultimately, these are the key reasons. These are the key reasons for looking at VxRail. Is one of them would be it's very cost effective in terms of the traditional infrastructure of having fiber channel storage and fiber channel SAN arrays and a multitude of tools. It's considerably easier than that. It's also simpler to monitor. It's very quick to initialize a cluster and expand cluster resources by adding nodes. There's also hybrid multi-cloud extensibility that I'll demonstrate in the next couple of slides. And naturally, there's operational efficiencies when you consolidate server teams, storage teams, and consolidate those silos when you have a single point of control and a single point of management using vCenter as that management construct. And because this is based on scale out architecture using Vsan and VMware, it's very easy to avoid bottlenecks and hotspots because you simply add new nodes, new capacity for storage and compute, and at the same time, DRS and Vsan are managing in the background the capacity and the workloads, both for VMs and for storage. So those are some of the key reasons why data center modernization can utilize VxRail. Now what I'd like to do is just touch a little bit on the VxRail program itself. So we talked a little bit about the benefits and the history of the product. Now let's just take a look at a little deeper dive, as well as looking at the program elements. So in terms of the software on the left-hand side, you can see here with the software, you've got your choice of Vsan. Basically, the way I like to refer to this is really Vsan for the common man. And so you've got Vsan that's bundled with the server. You've also got vCenter that's bundled with the server. There's a couple of different versions of vSphere that can be utilized on the system. It's also got extensibility into vRealize automation as well as vRealize operations. So that's why we say it's vRealize suite ready. There's some extensibility as well into Tanzu and Cloud Foundation. Then from a management perspective, it comes with VxRail Manager. There's also extensibility with APIs. So the VxRail Manager itself has an interface known as the RESTful API that allows you to provide some additional levels of automation. Built into the system naturally is automation and orchestration services. So that's during cluster initialization as well as cluster expansion. And there's a suite of ecosystem connectors that are also available. And one of the nice things that was mentioned earlier by the team was recover point for virtual machines. We'll talk a little bit about data protection options as well. But with recover point for virtual machines, you've got the nice capability of having DVR-like replication for the VxRail, and that's packaged with the VxRail appliance. So in other words, when you purchase the appliance, you get the packaging of the software. So it's very simple to manage the licensing, both from an acquisition and from a lifecycle management perspective. One of the key elements that was also touched on a little earlier is around lifecycle management. So it is a single-click lifecycle management capability that you have for the entire cluster. But beyond that, there's a full lifecycle management test regimen that is done from EMC. So naturally, EMC has a history of having excellent lifecycle management with the previously known as the ESM matrix. And so a lot of the capability and the intellectual property from EMC is being leveraged in this program. And so you have lifecycle management and full end-to-end stack validation for the hardware as well as for the software being the ESX as well as vCenter. And you can see there's some chest beating numbers in terms of the number of hours that are spent and the amount of lab investment that is in play for validating the environment. And why this is important is because rather than having to replicate systems in your own environment, you get tremendous amounts of efficiency and cost value out of these VxRail appliances because all of this testing is done in the background for you rather than you having to replicate an environment in your environment. So you get some significant economies as well as significant reliability. So site reliability and site reliable engineering was spoken about earlier. In this case, the reliability of the appliance is increased because it's a fully validated stack end to end. Just a quick snapshot. This has been a bit of a busy slide. The most important part is the part I've highlighted here, which is we've got a variety of different platforms. What's important here is that there's a lot of flexibility. Flexibility in terms of whether you want the easy button in terms of the E660F, that's more or less the bread and butter platform. Then you've got performance focused, and you've also got optimized for GPUs. So there's a family of products, and these are all leveraged on the PowerEdge program. The PowerEdge 15G program, which has been in place, we've been developing servers now for about 25 years. So you've got 25 years of expertise in reliability, 25 years of expertise in power and cooling. And these are all our enterprise class servers that are designed from the ground up by Dell out of Austin, Texas. So it's an excellent platform that the VxRail program is leveraging. It's the PowerEdge 15G program that we're leveraging today. Further to that, in terms of end-to-end disaster recovery capability, on the far left-hand side, you have continuous availability. This is one of the really unique points about VxRail that I like. You know, in the old days, maybe about 8 to 10 years ago, to be able to do a metro cluster, a geo cluster, or a stretch cluster, you would use things like vPlex, and you would have all kinds of fancy fiber channel to IP converters, and you would also be looking at something like Veritas cluster services. But now you've got metro clustering and geo clustering, stretch clustering, whatever you want to call it, really for the common man. And so not only has the cost gone down, but it has become significantly less expensive, an order of magnitude less expensive. In addition to that, in the middle, you have Recover Point. Now, Recover Point comes from Heritage EMC. It was traditionally a physical product. It got ported to a virtual machine. And what it allows you to do is to replicate on a transaction by transaction capability to a remote target device. The target device could be local or it could be remote. And it gives you the ability to have a point in time, whether it's 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, point in time recovery. So it's a tremendous product. And there's 5 licenses that are bundled with each node. So if you purchase a 4-node VxRail cluster, you get 20 licenses of Recover Point at no charge. And naturally, from a local data protection perspective, you also have the ability to add Power Protect Data Manager, which is our package offering of Avamar from EMC. So lots of resiliency built into the platform from a software level as well. Now, in terms of extensibility, this is a big picture slide, but I really like this slide because it shows you what VxRail can do beyond what we've talked about. So in the upper left-hand corner, you have VMC on AWS. So naturally, there's an option to run VM workloads in AWS. And the beauty of this product is that you also have the ability to connect your on-prem VxRail environment to an off-prem VxRail environment, or rather an off-prem VMware environment. And so that would be VxRail connecting to VMC on AWS. Now, how exactly does that happen? Well, that happens with a product or a solution that we call VMware Cloud Foundation. So you'll see that in the bottom section of the slide. So the bottom section of the slide, VMware Cloud Foundation sits on top of VxRail, and that's also one of the options at the time of purchase is going with VCF. That's the short-term verbiage that we use, VCF on VxRail. That forms our Dell Technology Cloud Platform, which is one of our key go-to-market platform strategies. VCF on VxRail has the ability to extend out to VMC on AWS. And so you have the ability to migrate workloads to AWS. You have the ability to manage workloads both on-prem and off-prem from vCenter. And you also have the ability to do cloud bursting. And cloud bursting is done with HCX. HCX is a packaged offering with NSX, and it gives you the ability to really enable a hybrid multi-cloud environment. So a tremendous amount of extensibility with the VxRail product. Some of the things that recently happened is VMware brought out with ESX 7.0 something called Hci Mesh. And Hci Mesh is the ability to remote mount a Vsan data store. And so as a result, we have some new capabilities that we've just recently launched in the last 3 or 4 months around Hci Mesh. And so these new capabilities are known as dynamic nodes and as satellite nodes. So with dynamic nodes, we have the ability to remote mount a Vsan data store to optimize storage efficiency. And the other area where this really comes into play is if you've got a tremendous amount of storage and you want a specific type of compute, perhaps an Oracle workload, then you've got the ability to scale asymmetrically. So some interesting capabilities there. So let's just do a quick little drill down. we're just in the final moments of the slide deck. Dynamic Nodes is a new platform that based on VxRail, it's an extension of the VxRail portfolio, leveraging HCI Mesh, where you can add compute-only nodes to a VxRail environment. You can scale your storage and you can scale your compute independently. And you still leverage the full lifecycle management and automation, everything that we've talked about. Lifecycle management, the deployment, the expansion is all fully capable with dynamic nodes. And so that really opens up a new doors to flexibility. The other door to flexibility is around satellite nodes. Naturally, there's a tremendous amount of talk right now about edge computing, the proliferation of data at the edge, and this is where the satellite nodes come into play. Satellite nodes are leveraged on the PowerEdge platform and the VxRail platform and give you the ability to deploy nodes out at the edge, up to 500 nodes per vCenter instance that you can manage and fully lifecycle and simplify management and simplify deployment using satellite nodes. So an excellent expansion or extension to the VxRail program. So ultimately, when you wrap it all up, some of the core benefits are really around time to value, time to market. So time to value in terms of how rapidly you can deploy and expand and instantiate a VxRail VMware system. You've also got simplified lifecycle management, simplified in terms of the overall full-time equivalent burden per person of managing a data center environment. And you've also got the enhancement in terms of availability. So as we talked about, the end-to-end lifecycle management, the simplified management of the VxRail environment really speaks volumes around its capabilities. And this is all demonstrated in the latest IDC report that was provided and provides these sorts of numbers. So you can see that accelerating your time to market and time to value, 10 months for a payback. So there's excellent value in the VxRail portfolio, excellent value in the VxRail appliance, and it's really a nice, well-packaged offering from EMC, Dell EMC technologies around Vsan and VxRail and PowerEdge. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, there were some really interesting points, especially around, site reliability. And if we view that when we get to the data center, having a highly optimized, HCI solution that we can orchestrate, we can automate, we can, manage templates rather than devices, and being, I actually did deploy vPlex for a customer, and it was not an easy process. So having those metro clusters, and so the interesting thing is we talk about that. We talk about, VMC and AWS, and really having those VMware instances on physical nodes, adjacent to the AWS cloud under that AWS umbrella. We talk about AWS native services, and we're really talking about the where. We're talking about, well, we're going to get to our data center. We're going to get to this shared VM space in VMC and AWS. We're going to get into the public cloud. And now we're about to pivot, and we're going to talk about the how. We're going to talk about how our customers can get there, how our customers can build resiliency between those different locations, knowing that, we just talked about the storage, we just talked about the compute, we talked about where we're going to operate the applications. And now we're going to talk to Joel and discuss a little bit about, well, how do we help our customers get to those? And so, I like to break it down. We've got data, we've got the applications, and then we've got the networking, we've got the transport that's going to get us there. And then, security being wrapped around all of those. I also liked, touching on data, because again, across that shared responsibility model, whether you're in AWS or Azure, whether you're in VMC and AWS, or you're in Azure VMware services, whether you're in your data center at the edge in a closet, or in your co-location, or in an office space, the data is always your responsibility. You always have to have versions of the data. You have to protect it against ransomware. So I that's one of those things I like to touch on a lot, because it doesn't matter what sort of a consumption model you're in, even SaaS services, you still have to be worried about the data. So Oh, that was great. So Joel, I appreciate you being on the call here. We're going to talk about some F5. And one of the really interesting things coming from Scalar and joining CDW is really that, we have some great F5 resources. Jacques and Marc-Andre love to talk to customers, love to help solve problems. We can train on F5. So we've been invested heavily in F5 and what F5 brings to the table for a decade. and and F5 is really, when we start looking at containers and we start looking about modern workloads, it
Yeah,
really becomes a different toolkit that's required. And so I know you're going to kind of talk about the F5 message, but I just want the
sure.
customers on the line to understand that, we've talked a lot about resiliency on the when you get to the where the data's at, you get to where you're operating the applications, but we still have to be resilient in getting the customers to the applications, getting the external
Right.
users to that front end. So I just wanted to lay that out for you and appreciate you talking to our customers today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to have the opportunity. Just by way of introduction, I'm Joel Moses. I'm a distinguished engineer for F5, but I'm also the CTO for systems and platforms. So I am the guy responsible for everything from the top level hardware and hardware design, all the way down through our incorporation of Virtual Edition, which runs wonderfully on top of VxRail. VMware has been a long-time partner for ensuring that we have a good, stable resource with which to run that particular product. But we also have in our landscape Nginx, and we've been aggressively taking some of the core services that we're kind of famous for and ensuring that those are available in lots of different forms and form factors, containerization being one. Now, you guys asked me to kind of comment on some of the research that you had done related to public cloud, and so let me get that going here. Um, the biggest thing that I noticed, especially in this finding, public cloud is a huge thing, and it's a huge thing for a number of different reasons that relate mainly to agility, flexibility, and the ability to do things that are outside the enterprise norm. And that is absolutely the case. We spend a lot of time thinking about what people do with their workloads, not necessarily where they run them or what underlies the workload or how the workload will be processed, but we actually spend a lot of time thinking about, okay, what exactly is happening and what are the needs of the applications for those workloads? What are the use cases for those applications? And when you dig down into it, you see that flexibility, agility, and productivity are actually at the core of everything that people do with their applications. We run our own research that we call the State of Application Services, and it largely centers around the application as the forefront of a digital transformation effort for customers. Empowering a remote workforce is, of course, something that gained new attractiveness with the pandemic that we've all been through. But outside of that, our own research proves out what your research says. So I would say that although your research is scoped to a Canadian audience, I would say that Canadian needs are global needs. We see the same thing across the board, the need for rapid digital transformation. That's largely driven by the types and numbers of applications backed by the data that are being deployed by customers. One thing that we note when we do our own research is that the demand for digital transformation is coming from all aspects of an organization. It's not just from the ones that face the customer. A lot of times it's an internally driven thing. It's not just IT operations or the either traditional IT. Business functions are increasingly they increasingly have needs to digitally transform themselves. And what this leads to is a consumption of lots of different techniques and technologies. It's not just one, it's always more than one. In fact, we see over 70% of our global enterprise customers running 5 or more application architectures. Some of them are data center side architectures or legacy style architectures. Others are based around public cloud. Still others that are emerging are surrounding things like edge technologies and edge deployments of applications. The implications of this are far reaching. It means that when you think about applications, you need to think about how to make different architectures internally consistent with each other. You need to know and understand how your operations burden changes the more of a hybrid mode you operate inside of. You need to make sure that you have the right visibility. Visibility tools often differ between cloud environments, public clouds in particular. But even if someone consumes private cloud tools in a traditional data center, sometimes they have different capability sets for visibility and analytics. Security is always a concern. You bore that out in your talk, in your section of the talk, but making the security consistent is also a concern. Not every single public cloud has exactly the same security mechanisms that you can deploy atop and through. Not every single system has the right set of capabilities or even the same policy processing basis as others. So maintaining consistency and security is important because you have to know that the policies are applied correctly. And in some cases, in regulatory environments, you have to prove that they've been applied in the same consistent manner. That's hard. We also see an explosion of different types and methods of APIs. API-driven applications are a very common mechanism that our customers use to remake legacy applications into things that are new. They convert to microservices, and the microservices are usually API driven. And so the explosion of API driven applications is causing some difficulties in creating the proper controls, the proper operations, and the proper management of the applications. So we're facing a diverse field of architectures. And that's driven by the fact that there are a diverse field of people fielding applications within any individual organization. And it's just going to happen, right? I would point out that we also see year over year, we've been tracking this for a number of years, year over year, we see a doubling of the number of public cloud workloads that are actually repatriating to private clouds that run inside data center environments. And it's not because the public cloud's going away, and it's not because the public cloud is declining in importance, but people are sharpening what they do in public cloud, and they're trying to design application topologies that are directly portable, agile, and movable, malleable. So that's been something interesting to see. We're also seeing the rise of the edge of things that are deployed at farther flung locations, very close to the user populations that they support. Applications that are based around AI or ML processing often have different needs for model development as opposed to runtime model execution. So you want to run the runtime as close to the user as possible because model processing is latency sensitive, but you want the learning complex, which requires a lot of compute, to be done at some other location. And the correct way to do that is to construct an application that actually does model processing at the edge and does learning processing somewhere in the cloud or data center environments. That means you're seeing a rise in the number of locations that have to be supported. We saw in the past year a 15% of our customers who are deploying or are actively seeking to deploy in edge locations, and that is up 8% year over year. And so we anticipate that is going to increase as well. Cloud has always shown an uptick year over year. So 68% of our customers are fully decentralized or fully embedded in cloud. 72% maintain data centers, and these are large enterprises we're talking about. Here's some surprising things that came out of our research. In order to pursue agility, customers are often willing to turn off critical things like security. That's nuts, but it represents a reality that in order to pursue the digital transformation needs that drives the business that customers execute on, they're willing to make trade-offs because they don't think that they have another choice. That consistency is too difficult to rationalize. that operational expense is too difficult to staff up for. And so they're willing to actually forego some things that they say are important in favor of the things that actually make money for the business. And that's calling out a need to balance risk and performance, as well as calling out for, shall we say, a way to abstract away some of the differences in environments to create a more consistent environment to run our applications inside. Does that make sense? Automation is great, and we've mentioned automation a lot of times. Automation won't solve everything for the cloud. Sometimes automation systems in and of themselves still require skilled professionals to create automations and manage automations. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch and having a set of workflows run. You also have to make sure the workflows run the same way all the time, and that they consistently run, and that no one has turned them off, or that the inputs are still good and the outputs are still valid. Integration of tool sets across vendors is also difficult. Some subsystems, especially in public cloud, are supported better on one automation platform rather than another, because some of the automation tooling that people use was actually created by people like Google. And so they don't necessarily support the other systems as a first-class citizen. The budget for tools for automation is there, but it's because there's so many systems to support, it's not necessarily a fait accompli that people have the budget for these tools. And of course, there's always resistance to change. There's always people who say, no, I don't want you to automate that because that belongs to me. I'm responsible for that, so you can't attach to that. So it's not that automation will solve everything. Now, what will solve a lot of things is abstraction. VxRail is great at abstracting away some of the underlying difficulties that people have in operating core infrastructure. On top of that, you also have to think about the needs of the workloads that you support, and creating a way to abstract away some of the things that applications need. Applications always need services. They need services for scaling. They need services for security. They need services for runtime protection, and making sure that those things are consistent regardless of the location that they run in, regardless of the performance and variability that you need to ensure for the application, regardless of what location they run in, period. If it's bare metal, if it's an IoT class device sitting in a far-flung sensor network, your applications are going to need to be able to do some of the same things that you need to operate the application successfully, that we have for years ascribed to the underlying infrastructure. So one of the things that I've been working pretty hard on is not just supplying the kit that we always supply. So Big IP VE running on top of VxRail is a wonderful way to apply web application firewalling. It's a wonderful way to ensure that you're collecting and analyzing and blocking denial of service attacks. Running Nginx for the purposes of an API gateway on top of VxRail is also a great way, or on top of Tanzu is a great way to ensure that the needs of your API-driven applications are taken into account. But in the end analysis, we kind of want to even take it up a step further. One of the things we'd love to see is a scenario where you can subscribe to a SaaS service that allows you access to create services or interact with services underneath that allows you to distribute across multiple cloud environments. So the future for F5 and F5's product set still maintains our old and venerable solutions. It adds a new set of microservices driven and lightweight software-based solutions. And we're also adding atop that an abstraction environment for abstracting away the difficulty of networking at the cloud level and the data center level, abstracting away the way services and policies are stitched into that, so that you can configure frankly, a service mesh without actually needing to go through the pain of choosing and installing and configuring and managing a service mesh. And then attaching that to workloads, so we can discover workloads from VxRail or Tanzu level Kubernetes environments. We can discover them from stock Kubernetes environments, or we can point at an existing big IP and pull in those workloads and make them configurable endpoints. We call this concept the distributed cloud. And it's really kind of the flip side of the infrastructure components that are necessary to create a survivable and resilient infrastructure. This is creating survivable and resilient services atop that infrastructure, and in a way that is internally consistent. So this is a lot of what I've been working on, and we're designing this to essentially operate like an intelligent mesh. This is part of our existing launch that took place last month, but it's something that we are internally very excited about. The mesh is intended to be to allow you to, just like VxRail can take a satellite node and add it in as an element that you can deploy to. We actually want to ensure that every service that's deployed across an application stack is also able to be added into a membership that abstracts away the networking and makes sure that that each element of an application can communicate with every other element of an application, even when that application is distributed across two public clouds and a set of IoT devices at the edge. Internally, it's about global communication. It's about creating a global context to your application so that you have one entry point that is near to the user, but it represents a global view of the application, a global Kubernetes cluster, so to speak. It's about locations. It's about being wherever the workloads are and wherever the processing needs are. And most importantly, because we know that if customers can't consume this in an internally consistent way, and they'll make trade-offs ahead of security, we want security to be embedded in an understanding of a global application context, so that when you configure an application context, it automatically receives internal protections. It automatically, from ingress to workload, handles things in a zero trust manner. That's what we're calling kind of the next iteration of the ADC, is the application distribution platform, not just delivery. It's about distributing things in a charitable and equitable way. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. It's good stuff. I mean, I think you touched on one of the keys there that really I think a lot of customers struggle with, and that is consistency across that hybrid infrastructure. Just because you're leveraging something in the public cloud doesn't mean all of your compliancy requirements magically vanish. Like there is, and that kind of leads me to some of the customer interactions that I've had where, customers have built a lot of intellectual property into what they do with F5, and it really is the front end of a lot of what, their external customers are touching. That's their first touch point. Internal applications, it's that first touch point. And it's interesting you mentioned abstraction, because we didn't really meet and coordinate, but you're absolutely right. It's in a lot of ways, F5 has been that abstraction that allows businesses to share an application, and then on the back end build that resiliency in layers with tools, like Dell's VxRail. And so I just look at you've got a platform to build this consistency, so that the intellectual property, the work and the effort I built to front end that application that was in my co-location, I can now take that level of effort and I can port it into AWS or Azure, or run it as a VM in VMC and AWS. And you're really able to take the work you've already done and reuse it, which is exactly what we talk about with orchestration. We're like, look, do the work one time, test it so that it's good, and then reuse it over and over and over and over again, as often as you can. And so no, I thought that was really powerful. And then as we look into containers, just the complexity of applications and introducing the network as a component to link applications together. I mean, I think the most complex system that I managed as an administrator is we had a Hyperion environment that was like 15 servers, clustered SQL on the back end, a bunch of middleware services, or I mean, I think it was Oracle, and that to me was a nightmare. It was 15 interrelated servers with all sorts of services. You know, we had startup scripts that were, you know, a mile long to get that application back going. And then I start to think about some of the microservices applications that you know our customers are developing, and there are hundreds or thousands of different services, all packaged, you know, using the network as the key transport between them. And so when you're talking about Nginx, I mean, the need for Nginx is the applications have fundamentally changed, and so therefore you need a lightweight firewall that will travel with those applications. So yeah, and I think, you know, to sort of sum up what we've been talking about today, it's all about building that resiliency in layers, building it in the data center, making it resilient to the public cloud, making it resilient to your shared cloud space, you know, like VMC and AWS, making sure that you're abstracting things at the right places so you build resiliency into that application connectivity, or from application components to other application components. You have that resiliency built in there with something like Nginx. So you know, I want to open it up for any questions. If anybody, you know, participating, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them into chat. You know, if you think of something after the call, you know, feel free to reach out to myself, reach out to the marketing team. You know, talk to your account managers. The solutions architects and the pre-sales resources we have, they love to solve these types of problems. It doesn't cost you to engage with one of our SAs. We want to help identify what are your requirements, how can we find solutions, you know, like F5, like Dell, like VxRail to then solve those problems, you know, alongside you. So, you know, like I said, encourage you to talk to your account executive, talk to your account manager, reach out to the marketing team. We'll also follow up with a link to the report that we've been referencing here, so that you can have that. And again, you know, if you have somebody that's interested in these concepts and interested in these ideas, and you just want to see, okay, well, how do we have a meeting to discuss this in more detail, or how can we take some of your you know, some of the things you're dealing with and then apply this type of methodology to solving those problems, you know, reach out to your account managers. They're your first line of contact, but they have access to, you know, Chris, myself, the rest of the solutions architects, cloud solutions architects, etc. So, but you know, Joel and John, you know, really appreciate your guys' involvement today. You know, thanks for bringing the ideas and the concepts to our customers.
Thank you, Joel. Joel.
Absolutely. And I posted into the chat some of the things that we've been doing internal research on related to the needs of applications. It's our State of Application Strategy report. It's brand new, just released a couple of weeks ago. It's got some really useful stuff in there, especially if you're trying to fight the good budget battle.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. I enjoy these things as well. And yeah, it's a whole different set of tools. Like we have a solutions architect that came from, you know, a online retail organization, and I listened to him, you know, talk about the toolkit that they used, and every single tool he mentioned was something that I was, you know, was not something I had hands-on experience with. So, you know, Ansible and Terraform and Jenkins, and you start to dig into these. There's a lot of tools available, and when you start to get into containers, everything starts to shift. And that's why, you know, Tanzu and platforms that we can build on top of, and tying in with services like Nginx are so key. So
yeah,
awesome. Well, thanks again, and I hope you guys have a great week. I hope, you know, all the customers on the line, I hope you guys have a great week, and be safe.
Thanks very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you for coming and spending some time with us.